there, beautiful people. I'm Celestine of Ghana Christian International High School. I will encourage you guys to subscribe to this course. Thank you. Bye bye.
Hello there. You are welcome to His TV. Before we begin with whatever we are supposed to do today, I would like to remind you to subscribe to the channel if you have not done so. Please subscribe to the channel. And in case you have also subscribed, we thank you very much for your support. This is the only channel or platform where you get video lessons in history, CRS, as well as government, based on the WASI, West African Examination Council's syllabus. And then also, so I recommend for everybody, teachers, students, everybody from tertiary to senior high schools. Good. So today we are looking at one of the Anglo-Ashanti Wars, or the British Asante Wars. So one of them is the Sagranti War, which was fought in 1873 to 1874. And then after that war, we will look at the Treaty of Fomena, a treaty which was signed, between the British and the Asante, somewhere in Fomena, in the Adansi area or region of Ghana. And then we'll bring our discussions to an end. So basically, these two subtopics are what we are going to look at today in our discussions. By way of reminding ourselves, in our previous lessons, we said that we looked at the reasons for the frequent wars between the Asantis and the British. So what were the reasons that accounted for the many wars that was fought among the British and the Asantis? And we came up with various reasons that accounted for such wars. And so we are going to look at an example of such of the wars, the important ones. Of course, we established about 10 wars were fought, but we are going to concern ourselves with the major wars and the outcomes of such wars. So if you did not watch that lesson, I will include a link in the description under this video. Please kindly go there and then watch that lesson for yourself. Good. So let's begin with our discussions for today. So our lesson objectives for today is quite simple. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to examine the causes, the causes of the Sagranti War of 1873 to 1874. All right, so the causes of the war, what brought about the war, you should be able to examine those causes. All right, and then also you should be able to state, all right, you should be able to state the terms or clauses in the Treaty of Fomena. So the treaty that was signed in Fomena, or the treaty that was drafted in Fomena, what were some of the terms or clauses in that treaty? You should be able to state some of these terms and clauses. And so these two objectives are what we are going to work around. So be mindful of it and let it guide you as we proceed with our lessons for today. So the Sagranti War. Sagranti War. Now, this war came about as a result of the Asante invasion in the coast in 1873. In 1873. So it means that it was the Asante Empire that first started the war. All right. So the Sagranti War in 1873 to 1874 was started by the Asante Empire. So it's like the war between Ukraine and Russia. It was Russia who threw in the first blow. So it was the Asante Empire that began the war, which became known as the Sagranti War of 1873. Now, why did the Asantis begin the war? I mean, was it because they just wanted to fight? No. So what happened that made the Asantis to attack attack the coast in 1873? So the reason was quite very simple. Prince Kakari, or Kari Kari, Kofi Kari Kari, sorry, Kofi Kari Kari, he was then the Asantehene at that time. All right. I think this name is supposed to be Kakari, not Kari Kari, because I don't think we have any name called Kari Kari. Well, I stand to be corrected though. But Kofi Kari Kari, as we know, as the records have it, he was the Asantehene from 1867 to 1874. Now, Kofi Kari Kari invaded the coast in order to recapture Elmina. Okay, he invaded the coast in order to recapture Elmina, which had come under the British control, okay, after the Dutch had left the country. So you recall in our previous video or lesson that I said you should go and listen to that lesson or watch that lesson. The link is in the description. One of the reasons for the frequent Anglo-Ashanti wars was the Sweet River Convention. And I told you that the Sweet River Convention was an agreement between the Dutch and the British in an exchange of fort and castles. So the Dutch were going to exchange fort and castles, whereby the Dutch were going to take all the fort in the western part, and then the British would take all the fort in the eastern part along the coast of modern-day Ghana. And we established that in that agreement, what happened is that Elmina, which was formerly for the Dutch, was now going to be under the British, okay, because of the exchange of the fort and castles. Elmina was now going to be under the authority or protection of the British. And we also established that Elmina was an important state or town for the Asante Empire. Why was Elmina important for the Asante Empire? Elmina was important for the Asante Empire because along the coast, or even in Central region, along the coast of Central region, it was only Elmina that the Asante Empire had total control. And if you could recall, I said that the Dutch who occupied Elmina as at that time were paying land rent to the Asantehene. So Elmina was a vassal state to the Asante Empire. Okay, and as such, Asante used Elmina as a port, okay, because there is no sea in Asante. So all their supplies, all their military supplies, ammunitions and guns and gunpowders and other things needed by the Asante were all gotten from the Elmina coast. Okay, and don't forget the Dutch were friends of the Asante Empire. The Dutch were not really interested in colonizing the Gold Coast, so they were mainly concerned with trade. Okay, so they did not have any much issue with the Asante. So far as you trade with us, they did not have any issue with the Asante. So the Dutch were friends of the Asante. But with this agreement, what that means is that Elmina is going to fall under the British rule or under the British protection. And of course, if you were the Asantehene, looking at how important Elmina is to you, I don't think you would look and sit down and watch Elmina go under the protection of the Dutch and of the British. And don't forget that the British and Asante are also not, they were not, friends. They have been fighting themselves. And so it was in the right direction that Kofi Kari Kari would invade Elmina or the coast in order to recapture Elmina, which was about to fall under the British protection in the Sweet River Convention. So that was what brought about the Sagranti War of 1873. So let's let's look at more. So the attempt to retake Elmina by the Asante provoked the British administration. And so in order to break the Asante's spirit of resilience, they had tried so many wars with the Asantes, yet the Asantes were still not giving up. All right. And so in order to break the Asante spirit of resilience, the British Army, under the command of Sir Garnet Wolseley, stormed Kumasi. Now, interestingly, this British Army commander, Sir Garnet Wolseley, look at the name of the war. The name of the war is referred to as what? The Sagranti War. So the name Sagranti War comes from Sir Garnet Wolseley. That is Garnet Wolseley War. All right, Garnet Wolseley War. But because, I don't know, because maybe the Asantis could not pronounce Garnet Wolseley well, or Sir Garnet Wolseley well, and so they decided to call it the Sagranti War. So if you hear Sagranti War, it comes from the commander who led the war, Sir Garnet Wolseley. So I'm sure, there were names coming up. Oh, it is Sir Garnet Wolseley, Garnet Wolseley, Sir Wolseley, Sir Garnet Wolseley, Sir Garnet Wolseley, who was coming, and then they came to have the Sagranti War. So that was that. So yes, so they stormed Kumasi in 1873. The British stormed Kumasi in 1873, and this war has been one of the most brutal and devastating war that the British ever fought with the Asantis. Because in this war, what happened was that the Asantis were defeated in the war. All right, Asante was defeated in the war. Okay, and even following the defeat, the British forces captured Kumasi. Okay, they captured Kumasi, and then they burnt down Kumasi. Kumasi was burnt down. Look at the image on your right hand side here. This was a sketch made by a British missionary who witnessed the war. Kumasi was burnt down. Houses were set on fire. Houses were set ablaze. The whole of Kumasi was burnt down by the British because they were provoked by the actions of Kofi Kari, the Asantehene at that time. So yes, the war was very, very, very devastating, even though it was the Asante who first of all started the war. So after the war, the British left, and I read a book that talked about this war vividly. It describes everything that occurred in the book. So after the war, I learned that the British came from Kumasi, so they were on their way back to Cape Coast. The forces left Kumasi. They were on their way back to Cape Coast, and then when they got to Fomena, those who know Fomena, around Obuasi, Adansi region area there, Fomena there, they were chased after by the Asante party, and so they came to meet them at Fomena, where they decided to draft a treaty or to sign an agreement. And so the treaty was signed, the treaty was drafted in Fomena, but it was not signed in Fomena. Bear that in mind. The treaty, the terms of the treaty, the agreements were drafted in Fomena, but the signing was done in Cape Coast. So that is why the treaty became known as the Fomena Treaty. So after the war, there was an agreement made between the two parties, and that is what is done everywhere. After a war, the two parties comes together to agree on certain principles, certain laid down agreements that is going to guide them, so that maybe such wars do not occur again. All right, so that is why we call the Treaty of Fomena. Good. So I think this is all that I have for you about the Sagranti War. So let's go and look at the treaties of Fomena, the terms and the clauses in the Treaty of Fomena. Now, don't forget that the fall of Kumasi shook the Asante the Asante states to its root because Kumasi was burnt down. Now, it determined also the future of the Asante Empire. All right. The terms of the treaty, as I have already indicated, was drafted in Fomena. Okay. And then later, it was signed. It was signed by the Asantehene, all right, and his principals, chiefs at Cape Coast, on the 14th of what? On the 14th of March. So after Garnet Wolseley left, it was signed on the 14th of March in Cape Coast, but the agreement had already been drafted in Fomena. So let's go in there and look at the what do you call it? The terms of the treaty. So the first term of the treaty, or one of the agreements in the treaty, was that the Asante or the Asante Empire was to pay an indemnity, and we also call it war fine, of 50,000 ounces of gold to the British. 50,000 ounces of gold to the British. That is a lot of money. 50,000 ounces of gold to the British. War indemnity. So what is war indemnity? Somebody may ask. Whenever war indemnity, now, whenever there is a war, two parties engage in a war, the one who loses would be asked to pay the cost of the war. You understand? So whatever that the other party lost in the war, you, the loser, you'll be asked to pay. That is what the war fine meant in those days. And so even after, if you look at the European histories, Germany at the Treaty of Versailles, after the First World War or so, was fined, and that even was the reason why Adolf Hitler came back with the Second World War. And so war indemnity has been there. The loser would always pay for the cost of the war. So Asante was meant to pay 50,000 ounces of gold to the British for the cost of, and this was huge amount of money, huge amount of gold that the Asantis may not or could not do it. Now again, one term of the treaty again was that all the vassal states of Asante, okay, south of the Pra, were to be granted their independence. And the states south of the Pra, some of them were the Denkyera state, the Asim state, the Akyem state, and the Adansi state. Today we call them the Adansi people, the Akyem people, Asim people, and the Denkyera people. In those days, they were all considered as state. Now, which then suggests that all these states had been conquered by the Asante Empire. And so they were termed as vassal states. And vassal states are states which have been conquered by a powerful state. So what these vassal states do is that they pay homage or taxes to their conqueror. So all these vassal states were supposed to be given independence because they were under the rule of the Asante Empire. So indeed, it looks as if that some people, even and also don't forget that these states were also fighting at a point in time for their independence from the Asante rule, and Denkyera and co were all victims of that. So indeed, some people were actually struggled for independence twice, if I may say it in that way, because all this time Asante, was autonomous, but some states were not. So some states actually had to fight for their independence twice after the British colonial rule. They had to fight for their independence from Asante Empire, and also fight for their independence from the British. And that is interesting. So Asante was asked to renounce claim of all these states. And you could recall in our previous lesson the effect of the Anglo-Ashanti Wars. We said that it led to the breakup of the Asante Empire. And so this is a classical example of why the empire, reduced to a very small size because of this. So all these states were under the Asante. So all these areas, if you happen to know your map well, and you know all these areas, they were all part of the Asante Empire. Now again, Asante was also to renounce her claim to Elmina and its allied tribes. Of course, one of the reasons for the Sagranti War was to reclaim Elmina, which had been for the Asante time immemorial. And so now that they have been defeated, of course, Britain would tell the Asante Empire to renounce claim of Elmina. So now Elmina was not going to be for the British anymore. Renounce your claim on Elmina. Again, Asante was also asked to withdraw his troops from the coastal areas and keep the trade routes also open. All right, because they wanted to monopolize the trade. Only their people should be engaged in the trade. So they were asked to withdraw all their troops along the coast and also keep the trade route open. Then the last one, they were also asked to stop human sacrifices. And this is one of the areas that we normally commend the British for. Putting an end to human sacrifice. So these were the treaties, these were the terms that the Asantis signed for. And they were the losers. So definitely, you see that all the terms or the agreements in the treaty were against the Asante Empire because they had lost the war, and so your master would have to dictate for you. And so you see all these terms seek to reduce the empire. It will affect the empire, very, very much. So so this treaty came to replace the Treaty of 1831 that was signed by Maclean, that we call the Tripartite Treaty in 1831, as the basis between the British and the Asante relations. And therefore, if Asante goes contrary to what they have agreed in this treaty, what will happen is that they will be attacked. Good. So I think we've had a good time today. Please subscribe to the channel. This is a work that you can try your hand on, but please don't go without subscribing. Thanks for your time, and let's meet some other time. Have a nice day.
TV, first among equals. Bye.